Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome, welcome, welcome. It is Tuesday. It is 4 p.m. ET, and we are so thrilled that you have found us here on Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze. I'm your host, Hank Phillippi Ryan, the USA Today bestselling author of 15 going on 16 novels of suspense. My current novel is One Wrong Word, which comes out in paperback next week, just saying. And my brand new book will be out next year called All This Could Be Yours. And we will talk about that in a while. But today I want to introduce you or reintroduce you to the fabulous, absolutely brilliant Shari Lapena, whose new book, What Have You Done, is out today. It is Pub Day. Hooray. You all, this is such a terrific book. And it's so revealing and it's so sinister. And it has such a shape. And I don't exactly know how to describe it to you, except that when I was reading it, I started sort of hearing Ravel's Bolero. You know what I mean? How it sort of starts out small and then spins into bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And in the end, all the music is involved. And it just starts from that one little moment as the music swells. If you know it, you'll know what I mean. Or you might be saying, what is she talking about? But that is what went through my mind when I was reading the absolutely sinister and secret-filled What Have You Done by Shari Lapena. So happy Pub Day to you. And you are in the U.S. You're from Canada. Where are you right now?
I am in Mobile, Alabama.
Fairhope. Have you been to Mobile before?
No, this is my first time ever.
That's amazing. And go ahead.
I have an event tonight at Page and Palette Books.
I'm
looking forward to that tonight.
That sounds, you were telling me that they were making a special drink for you?
It's called a Murdito. I think it's a combination of murder and mojito, but I'm looking forward to discovering it.
That is just great. And that is what book tour is all about, right? New exotic drinks.
Yeah.
How long have you been on the road now for this?
Oh, just a couple of days. I started off in Orlando yesterday. I think it was yesterday. Yes.
And how long will you be out?
Just till Friday. I'm going to Dallas tomorrow and then St. Louis, Missouri.
That's so fantastic. And all of you, come see Shari. Go to her website and find out where her events are. Go see Shari and say hello and get this book. You will absolutely love it. And remind her that you saw her on Crime Time. That would really be fun. So she could know that you are engaged, then you have been here and talked to her first on her Pub Day here on Crime Time on A Mighty Blaze. If you don't know about A Mighty Blaze, if you are new, welcome, welcome, welcome. We're so pleased to have you all here, and we absolutely adore our veterans as well, like Emily and Shannon Hansen and Susie Baldwin. Renee Herskowitz is here asking about your talk in Winter Park Library. How was that last night?
It was good. There was a good crowd there. They had great questions, really good questions. Lots of books flying out the doors, so it was a fun time.
That's a beautiful place. I love that library. It's a gorgeous auditorium.
Yeah, and it's funny because Kathy Reichs is going to be there next week, and I was talking about her because I'm going to interview her in Toronto in a couple of weeks. So yeah, we all kind of cycle around to the same kinds of libraries and bookstores.
It's great, isn't it? The people whose books we read as fans, and now we're pals or we're interviewing each other. It's really a fun sort of part of the writing life, isn't it?
Yeah, it's lovely. I mean, you do make friends over the years. Like, we've become friends, and it's wonderful. I said to someone, it's kind of like being a tennis pro. You sort of meet people on the circuit. You go to Thriller Fest and you see people, and you go to Harrogate and you see people. So it's a really nice sort of collegial atmosphere and a lot of great people. And it is nice to see people once a year or, every couple of years.
And share the on the road stories.
Yeah.
There are many. Anyway, just to wrap up, I distracted myself by Renee's wonderful question. Mighty Blaze was started at the beginning of the pandemic 4 years ago. Wow, by the fabulous powerhouse team of I know their names, Jenna Blum and Caroline Levitt. I'm doing well today, you all, to keep us talking and keep us in communication and keep us discovering new books, to keep us learning about the latest novels from our favorite authors or making maybe a new favorite author. That is what we are here for today. So, speaking of favorite authors, we are going to talk today to Shari Lapena, whose new book, What Have You Done, is just out. And if you do not know Shari, I'm so honored to introduce her to you. She is one of the best thriller writers of all time, one of my very, very favorites. And here's a little bit about Shari. She is the #1 internationally best-selling author of 7 suspense novels, including The Couple Next Door, which I bet every single one of you has read, the beginning of Shari's career as a thriller writer, A Stranger in the House, An Unwanted Guest, Someone We Know, The End of Her, Not a Happy Family, and Everyone Here is Lying. And if you read those titles in a row, it's a really good story altogether, I have to tell you. A former lawyer and English teacher, Shari now writes full-time from a farm in Ontario, where she lives with her husband and a pony. Did you get
And
it?
a pony and a cat. Yeah.
You had a famous cat, a Muse, for a while.
I did. I had a famous cat called Poppy who was very into crime fiction, and she helped me write all my thrillers. And she sat on a chair right next to me, and I put her in the acknowledgments of all my books. And then she died just over a year ago,
I
quite
remember that.
sort of surprisingly. And then she got an obituary in the New York Times book section because I was being interviewed. I was being interviewed by someone from the New York Times Review of Books, and she found out that my cat had died, and she really liked obituaries. So we ended up talking, and now I've got that article on my wall in my office, and it's a little bit about me in my book, but a lot about my cat.
That is really cute.
I know.
Poppy is up in cat heaven having cream and tuna.
Exactly. But anyway, so she's immortalized, but we have a new cat now called Ginger, and she's more of my husband's cat, and she's not really into fiction. I don't know why.
Well, you can introduce her as time goes by. A couple more things about Shari before we go on to the interview. Her first thriller, The Couple Next Door, was a runaway global bestseller, selling 4 million copies worldwide. It was W.H. Smith's Book of the Year in 2016 and the #1 adult fiction title in the UK for 2017. All of Shari's novels have been New York Times, UK Sunday Times, and Globe and Mail bestsellers. 3 of her books have been Richard and Judy Book Club picks. Her books have been sold into 40 territories around the world and have been optioned for film and TV. And she says in her bio, she doesn't want you to be able to put her books down. And you all, you cannot put this down. And I have to tell you that I actually read this one twice just to see how she did it. And it is absolutely all there. So welcome. Don't let me forget to say that you can win a copy of this book, not this one, because I am keeping this particular copy. Hi, Sylvia. But Shari and her publisher are graciously giving away a copy to one lucky commenter. So leave a comment in the chat, just general adulation and applause or fangirling or whatever you want to do. Or even better, leave a question, or just as good, leave a question for Shari, which we will answer at the end of the show before we give away a copy of the book. And Robin Stell says, how do you comprehend selling 4 million books? How do you?
You know what? It's amazing to me. It's a miracle because I wrote literary fiction first. I wrote comedies, and I sold, I think, 1,200 copies of one and maybe 1,500 copies of the other. And when I wrote my first thriller, when I wrote Couple Next Door, I thought, no, this is okay. It's not bad. Maybe I can get an agent, maybe I can get it sold. I had no idea what was coming. I had no idea that it would sell the way it did. And it's still selling now. It still sells every week.
And I think the thing about The Couple Next Door is that it's so, and all of your books, and we'll talk about what have you done in accompaniment with that, is that it's so relatable. If I remember correctly, it's a couple who just leaves their baby for a minute to go somewhere for a minute, and they have a monitor and what can happen, and the book is about what can happen. Everybody has thought about that.
Yeah, it's things that could happen to just about anybody. You sort of feel reading them that you're one like poor decision away from complete disaster. But it's also, I always try to make my characters so that maybe they made the wrong decision, but you understand why they made that decision, and you can sort of understand it. And it's on that edge, you can understand, you can see how it could happen. So you don't necessarily have to hate them. You just sort of say, whoa, things just escalated really quickly for this person. But
Exactly.
that's the space I like to explore.
I mean, that is so brilliant. One bad decision away from disaster, especially when your characters, who are such, such normal, lovely human beings, all with secrets,
Mhm.
are doing something because they think it's the right thing to do at the time. And, you're going, I don't know. So let's go back. Let's go back. Let's set this book up for people. Tell us a little bit about, as much as you can, about what have you done and what it's sort of about.
Okay. So this book starts off with the discovery of the body of a high school girl, Diana Brewer, in a hayfield. So a farmer's driving along in his tractor and he sees these vultures congregating on the field. And he drives his tractor up and he sees that there's this dead, naked girl in the field and he recognizes her because it's a small rural community. Um, and so what happens next is they call in the police officers from the town. And there's only two of them because it's a very small town. And eventually they have to call in the Vermont State Police because it's set in Vermont. Um, and then the girl's, we see the girl looking down at her own body. And that was a surprise to me. So when she looks down at her body and she's a ghost and she's seeing herself there and she thinks she's asleep and having a bad dream. When that happened, I realized it was going to be a ghost story too. So I haven't done that before in my thrillers. So I just really liked her voice. And so I went with that. And so throughout the book, we do hear from the victim, the murder victim in this story. She's a teenage girl. And she's also trying to figure out what happened to her, what led up to her death. And what I like about it is it's a ghostly presence, but she's just a really typical her voice is that of a typical high school girl. Um, it's not ooh or anything like that. It's you hear her voice, and we don't get to hear from the victims very often of murders. So I thought it was a really good way to get into what happened to her.
I'm so fascinated by what you said about, and part one of the voices is the victim, and you said, and when that happened, I thought, oh, when that happened. So I'm picturing you sitting at your computer, typing away at the story, and the farmer Roy finding the body,
Mhm.
and you're typing, and the voice of the victim appears on the page.
Mhm.
How did that happen? What happened? And
I
what?
don't know how that happens. I often surprise myself. It wasn't until I knew when I started this book, I knew it was going to be a girl's body in a hayfield because we live on a farm. And a few years ago, there had been a deer next to our farmhouse and all these vultures swarming it. So I knew that someday I wanted to find a body in a field with vultures to start a book. And I knew I wanted a rural kind of book, but that's all I really knew. And for me, it's always, I start with the germ of an idea and then the characters, they're in a situation of conflict and then they grow. And setting sort of comes to me after. So when I realized I had this ghost and I knew I wanted it to be rural with the hayfields, I thought I'm going to set it in Vermont because I know Vermont has a really good background of ghost stories. And then once I knew I had a bunch of high school kids involved, and I thought I'll give them an English teacher, and then she'll have just done a unit on the ghost story. And it all kind of, we've got the Vermont history of ghost stories, and we've got the English stories that they're studying in school, and it just all came together. So for me, setting off comes together after I start off with the characters and the conflict, and they kind of grow the plot, and then setting kind of coalesces around them afterwards.
Well, it works so beautifully, and I keep now thinking about, as you saying, talking about growing the plot. That again,
Mhm.
I'll just leave Bolero behind and go for a tree. That when a tree starts to grow and goes straight and then blossoms and blooms and the leaves come out, there's the
Yeah.
sort of ramifications of what's happened from the seed. But what and you do that beautifully, the crime and the investigation. But also in the novel, so beautifully, are the roots of the problem. Why did that crime happen? And everything, all the underpinnings of what.
I love that metaphor. And can I just say it's even better? Like the roots and the trees, everything, the branches all going off. You don't know where the branches are going to go. But then there's the pruning that happens afterwards.
I
The
love it.
editing. Yes, so it's a beautiful metaphor for writing a book.
And especially how you do it, because it sounds like how you do it is sort of you plant the seed and the story grows, even grows to you.
Mhm.
Do you, and I don't, and I want to go back and talk a little bit more about the story and the characters and the setting and the people who don't live there, and the idea of the sort of xenophobic nature of a small town. But have you always written that way, just sort of cultivating a seed that grows?
I have always done that, and I started out, as I said before, with comedies. Because, and the reason I started with that is because I thought if I wrote literary fiction, I could just go along and meander along, and the plot wasn't so important. But I've always loved thrillers, and I wanted to write thrillers, but I really held back from trying because I didn't know how to plot. And I didn't know any thriller writers or mystery writers, and I didn't know that it was possible to actually write a thriller without planning it out in advance. And now, of course, I do know some thriller writers that do it that way. And it's just the way I work. I mean, my unconscious is kind of planning it and figuring it out. And when I write it, one thing leads to another. So, each day I carry the story along, and I find I have to write in a straight line linearly because I don't know what's going to happen. So I have to go A to B to C to figure out what's going to happen. But then things just organically grow. Like the characters will do something or say something, and that will push the plot along. And someone will react to what they've said or done, and that will push the plot over here. And then it just keeps, expanding out all over the place.
But that's part of the genius of your writing, and part of the genius of this novel is that the story irrevocably advances. I mean, insistently, the story moves forward. But, it's sort of encircling the plot are all the decisions that people make along the way, every single one of which moves the story ahead. And this is such a gorgeously character driven novel, in that you are the queen of point of view. I have never seen anybody so seamlessly allow us to be in so many people's heads in the most understandable, most interesting, least confusing kind
Mhm.
of way. Is that how the people appear to you too? They just pop, sort of like our town, sort of populate the book.
They don't even appear. I take them on, and then I pretend I'm in their head, and then I just live them as I write. So I'll switch into like the dead girl, say, and I'll be her. And I'll be, oh, I'm looking down at this body, and oh, it looks like me, but it can't be me because I'm here. And oh, this must be a dream. And oh, that's awful that her eyes have been plucked out by the vultures. That must hurt, but it doesn't hurt anymore because she's dead. And I just get into the person, and I don't know. It's just like I just become them, and I take on all their emotions and all their baggage and all their questions. And yeah, I just and then I'll switch to the farmer, and the
And
farmer will be
it's sort of like method acting, that
kind
I'm
of.
sure that your posture is even a little bit different if you're writing the grieving mother, or the protective mother, or the sinister fill in the blank person, or
Yeah.
the or fiance who knows what's going to happen to her.
Oh yeah.
And you um but it comes through so beautifully. But to the reader, we know everybody's points of view as much as you're telling us about them. So we know more than the characters know. And that's so much part of the fun of reading What Have You Done? That you're
That's how I get to manipulate the reader, because characters know different things, and they don't know what each other knows, and I know everything, up to a point. I have to keep inventing as I go. But yeah, that's the fun in it for me, for sure.
and so, but the thing that's interesting is, you the characters know, the reader knows more than the characters know. But at this in as you're writing the book, you don't know the whole big picture story. So it's a
Exactly.
mystery that you're trying to solve as well. And that's one of the things that makes it so fresh and wonderful. But again, and let me just say, and then I'll go on to another part of the story, is that your points of view are so interesting, because sometimes you as the author are flying high over the story. We get this wide shot of this little town.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's a little bit more intimate, sort of relationships and expectations and couples and families sort of on a mid-level. And then you also go really deep into individual people's psyche and personality and motivations.
Yeah.
All three levels are there. Is that something that you consciously do?
I don't consciously do it. I just get into it, and I do when I'm editing. I'll go back and I'll look at that kind of thing. But mostly, the depth of the point of view is all feeling. So my books are all feeling. Like they're emotional books. It's all about the emotions for me and the feeling. So they have a very hot point of view. It's not they're not detached books. They're very intense feeling books. So for me, I go with my feelings, and that's what drives me through my books.
A very hot point of
Emotion.
view. I've never heard hot point of view
Yeah.
as a phrase before, but that's so evocative. I completely know what that means. And you were talking earlier about how the setting comes a little bit later, but the
Mhm.
setting, this super rural place in Vermont,
Mhm.
plays such a role in this because in a little town like that, everybody, you think you know everything about everyone, and this book proves you
Mhm.
don't. And there's
Yeah.
also this sort of refrain throughout of the murderer must be someone from away, it must be someone from not around here.
Mhm.
Everybody says that. Can you talk a little bit about that theme and about the use of the rural setting?
Well, people don't want to think that people they know would have done something so horrible. And I think the reason it's more appealing in a way for this story to be in a rural setting is that in a large city, in a large anonymous city, people don't know each other, and you can bad things happen, and it doesn't affect you as much. But in a small village or town where you've grown up with everybody, you know everybody, it just seems that much more shocking and disturbing if someone in your mix has done something like this.
And each of the characters, though, has a secret of some kind.
Yeah.
And those secrets are so palpable and so in furtherance, every one of them is in furtherance of the story. Do they tell it? Do they reveal it? Sometimes people who find out things tell the police, and sometimes they keep the things from the police and each other. Do you know everyone's secrets? Here's, fill in the character name who is actually fill in the bad thing, or do those evolve as you get to know the characters along the way?
They evolve as I get to know the characters. So, for instance, when I was writing that first scene when the farmer's going along and he was thinking about his daughter's upcoming wedding, when I wrote that, I was just putting in some color. I didn't know that he was going to have a daughter, and I certainly didn't know that she was going to be engaged to somebody in the story. That came later. And then I thought, oh, that's why that's why my unconscious put in that his daughter was getting married. And then it wasn't until later that I thought about, oh, it's interesting that the dead girl is in his field, considering that his daughter's getting married. Yeah, all these things sort of intertwine, and I think my unconscious sort of sets them up without me really consciously realizing it. Because then when something happens down the road, I think, oh, that was set up down here. And I didn't realize it.
Yeah, Lee Child used to talk about how and he writes exactly the same way. And Randy's saying, I lived in Vermont for 12 years. It's my favorite state. This is great. Yay, Randy from Barnes and Noble. Lee Child used to talk about how at the beginning of each book, it was like those cooking shows where they give you a refrigerator full of stuff and you have to make something out of it.
Yes.
And he would talk about how at the beginning of the book, he was just filling in his refrigerator, the vultures, the father, the wedding, the whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then after the first 100 pages, it was time for him to take them out and put them together and see what ingredients he had and how they fit together. And
That's
that,
interesting.
mhm. So you're putting together, just like the reader is,
Yeah.
putting together a puzzle. And I have to say, and this is the highest of compliments, how Agatha Christie-esque this book is, contemporary, very super contemporary Agatha Christie, in that every word she chose, every word did work, and every word meant something. And if a girl is strangled, and then later someone sort of makes a strangled noise, and you think, oh, he did it. because
I
why
didn't even notice that.
you didn't? Oh
I
no,
did not notice that.
I, I'm,
Oh
I'm,
my
I'm,
gosh.
I'm imparting you genius that you didn't even know you had. But it happens so often, Shari, in your
Oh,
books that there are things that may be clues and that sort of color who someone is. And I'm fascinated that you don't, I mean, you must know that
I
sometimes.
probably know most of them, but that, the odd one is there's sort of like little Freudian slips or little unconscious blips that I'm not aware of.
I guess that's called being a good writer. I mean, I guess that's called being a good writer. You know, this book is also, I mean, I love the people who, it's so relatable, the people who are doing things in order to protect someone else. Yeah, Clued Up Reader says that unconscious setup is called talent. Thank you. Yes, that is exactly what this is. Um, you were talking earlier about how careful you are about motivation and making things people be motivated so that the readers are saying, well, I'm not sure I would have done that, but I see why she did, or I see why
Yeah.
you know, this sort of parental relationships are very strong in this novel, what
Yeah.
parents expect of their children and what people hope for their children. Can you talk a little bit about why that's such a powerful motivation and why you use that in this book?
I am always interested in parental relationships. So whenever I have a crime in a book, um, I'm not so interested in the police procedural aspect of it. I'm interested in how the people are affected by the crime. And so when in this book, a teenage boy, his very first girlfriend, who he loves, is murdered. And so the parents, of course, there's ripple effects outward from that for everybody in the town. But imagine if your son, his girlfriend was murdered. Like that's so disturbing. And they're worried about him, how he's going to cope with the fact that his first love has been murdered. And as the book goes along, he becomes a suspect with the police because he's fibbing a bit about where he was that night because he doesn't want to get in trouble. And then, they have to deal with him maybe being a suspect. And then when they catch him out in a lie, they start to wonder, okay, what really happened here? And I always love to go into all the extended family to see who's affected by what's happened. So Diana's mother, she's a single mom, and of course she's absolutely destroyed by the fact that her daughter is dead. But interesting about her, she's not just grieving; she can also sense her daughter's presence in the house, and she's the only one that senses the presence of her daughter. We, the reader, we know the daughter's there. She just can't. She just can't permeate that invisible wall between her and her mother and comfort her mother. And the poor mother, people start to think that she's losing her mind because she thinks her daughter's there. And it's just so sad. She's lost everything when she loses her daughter. And then she has this horrible situation where she wants to set her daughter free, to find peace, but she also wants to hold her close. So she feels guilty about that. Um, so it's just interesting. Like I like to go farther than just the girl's dead and let's solve the crime. I like to see how it reverberates amongst all the different people.
And that's why and we're talking about What Have You Done by Shari Lapena. That's why there's tension on every page. There's this taut feeling on every page of what's going to happen. Don't say that. Do say that. Don't, tell the truth. Just tell the truth. And I understand why you're not telling the truth. If someone knows that someone wasn't where they said they were, but it's better for them if they don't say anything about it. Is so taut and so suspenseful. And then how, just like Agatha Christie, there are many people, all of whom we understand could have been the killer. And we understand why that might have been and how that thread, if you pull that thread, could have happened. Is that fun to just set up this
I think so.
story about that?
That's what I love about it. That's my favorite thing. I like to write my first draft and I like to set these things up like the fiance and the teacher. Um, I had so much fun with that. And the reporter. And the reporter, when she comes in and, he's in this, I always like to make scenes where there's so much at stake. And so there's a scene in that book where the reporter comes in and she's going to um, divulge a secret in front of the fiance and he hasn't told her yet. And there is a lot of tension because everyone's terrified of what's going to come out all the time.
And
The thing is, for the reader, you don't really know how bad any person has been. So you see that they've got a lot at stake, but you don't quite know how much. So I set it up so that a number of people could have done the crime. Um, and they all have reasons, and they're all behaving in a way that makes you look at them suspiciously, but you might also think they didn't do it, and they might be being misunderstood. So I don't know how it's going to end until, I get closer to the end and I think, okay, so what really happened here? Um, so it's fun for me because I want to find out too, like how far can I take this engagement situation? How far can I take the parents? Are they going to do something terrible to protect their son who may not have done anything wrong at all, or he might be a murderer and they don't know? But are they going to do something really terrible just in case?
yeah.
Or,
And people who feel guilty and behave in a guilty way may
yeah,
not be guilty because they killed someone. They may be guilty of something else that they're
yeah.
trying to cover up. Oh, it is delicious. Shari Lapena. This is such a fantastic book. And we could talk about this for absolutely ever. It's about obsession and expectations and family and friendship, and just how far you would go to get what you want. And you have done it so gorgeously in What Have You Done, which applies to the question applies to every single person in the book. Robin says, I want to say your name properly. You say it, Shari.
Shari Lapena.
Shari Lapena. And now you know what book to ask for when you go into the bookstore and how to properly say her name. Let's take a couple of questions. Thank you, Shari. I hope I have completely let you all know, or sufficiently let you all know, what a terrific book this is. Kim is saying, which of your books surprised you most when you completed it? What a great question. And how did you know you were done?
Ooh. That's an interesting question. How do I know when I'm done? Because sometimes people like my books to be a little more done than they are. So I like to leave them hanging a little bit. So it's always, for me, it's when I when I think I know what really happened, what the best answer is. But then I usually leave it so there's a little bit. I don't think I did in this one though. I don't think I left it open ended.
No, I mean,
This one was finished off, wasn't it? Yeah.
no matter what you do, in every book, the major story question is answered.
Yes.
The crime is
Yeah.
solved.
Yeah.
And of course, because the people are, forgive me, but are living characters, of course their lives are going to go on, and we don't know exactly what will happen to them, and
Yeah.
we don't know how they'll be affected by whatever happens. But it's certainly not one of those books that you think at the end, well, what happened? There's no ambiguity of the solution.
Yes. So this one, I probably won't get asked for sequels on this one, but some of them I leave it a little bit more open-ended. But the question was, which one surprised me most at the end? That is a very good question.
Which you do not have to answer.
Yeah, I don't think I can answer it. I think I'm always a little bit surprised at the end, but I'm always a little bit like, yeah, that's where it was going.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting because I do it exactly the same way. And at about 7/8 of the way through the book, I'm thinking, I got to cut bait now. I'm going to have
Gotta wrap it up.
Yeah. But somehow doors that were once opened are closing as you get closer to the end, and it sort of narrows down the possibilities of what it might be as people start going to where they're supposed to go, and the inevitable, the ending becomes a little more inevitable where 10 pages ago it wasn't. All right, let's take another question. If you had to spend 24 hours with any of your characters, which one would you pick? Oh, what a good question.
Ooh.
Coffee.
Well, it wouldn't be Avery from, Everyone Here Is Lying. Do you know what? I'm going to have to say there's a woman in the book I'm writing now that I'm just finishing coming up next year called Alice. I'd want to spend time with her.
What can you tell us about that book?
She's a psychopath.
Good old Alice.
She's a very interesting psychopath.
That's okay. Do you have a title that you can tell?
No, not yet.
All right. Well, moving right along. Who else has a question? Was there what a good question, Sylvia. Was there a particular teacher mentor that encouraged your reading writing efforts?
I have to say no. Not when I was growing up. I was I wouldn't say discouraged from writing, but I was sort of led to believe it wasn't really something worth pursuing for me. Not from a teacher, but just you get that sense from people that it's not a good career move. So I didn't start writing until I was much older. No, but when I did start writing, um, there were a few people that were very encouraging to me. People who were already established writers who I met through writer in residence programs at the library, for instance, people like that. Um, but yeah, like as a young child teacher, no, I didn't have anyone encourage me.
And you became a lawyer, is that right?
Yeah, briefly. I didn't enjoy it.
I mean, that is a lot of research that you did for future books. Now
I guess so.
now you know the legal stuff. Now you know the legal stuff. Two more questions. Who else has another question? Sherry says, "Hey Sherry, what books do you like to read?"
I like to read crime and thriller. Haha, big surprise. Yeah, that's usually my favorite kind of book to read. It's what I go to when I'm watching TV or movies. I've always liked it. I started off with Nancy Drew and Agatha Christie, and I love all crime thrillers, spy thrillers, anything exciting with suspense in it. I love that stuff. I'm not one to read slow books.
Yeah. Has being such an acclaimed author changed the way you read books?
It's funny. I do get asked that. I find a lot of writers will say, reading is ruined for me now. I find myself analyzing everything I read. I never do that. I just read for fun. I still read for enjoyment, and I don't analyze books, at least not until I've finished them. Like I do get caught up in books, and I don't look at the technique or the craft or anything like that until I'm done. I love a story. I get caught up in the story. And then sometimes I'll look back and I'll go, how did they do that? But not when I'm reading it, not if I'm enjoying it.
Yeah. And that is the sign of a good book, isn't it? When the walls sort
I
of
think
fall
so.
away, you forget
Yeah.
you're reading.
Yeah. If
Absolutely.
you find yourself over analyzing a book as you read it, you're not really in the book. You're not living the book.
Yeah. Or if you're sitting there reading it thinking, come on, let's go.
Yeah.
Let's get this, something better happen soon.
Yeah.
Let's take one last question, you all. Do you do anything? Hi, Deborah. Do you do anything special for yourself for a book launch?
Do you know what? I don't do specific book launches. Like today, for instance, I'm doing an event and we'll celebrate with our Morditos. But if I'm at home, I will always have some Prosecco, some bubbly.
That's a good idea. Very, very good.
I always do that.
And if you want to ask Sherry more questions, let me tell you that she will be part of the panel this Sunday at 4 p.m. No, that's wrong, 7 p.m. ET in the back room on a panel with Linda Bond and Ellie Griffiths and Catherine Stedman. So it is going to be astonishing, up close and Zoom personal. Sherry will be there and will take your questions live, and you can be on camera too. So go to the-back-room.org and sign up, but not right now because
Ask me anything. They can ask me anything in the back room.
They can ask, yes, and it's not taped, so it's all what goes on in the back room stays in the back room. No question.
Oh, that's exciting.
So let's spin the Yay Team Prosecco. Where Robin Stoll is on Team Prosecco, and I am absolutely too. So let's spin the wheel of fun and give away a copy of What Have You Done to one lucky commenter. You can see this is super random, so we'll see what happens. Lots of new people today. I'm so glad. Elaine Bennis, I don't think so. And the winner is Robin Stull. Yay, Robin. And you always ask such marvelous questions.
Congratulations.
That you are here today. So you will get a notice to email me, and I will email our executive producer, who will email Sherry's publicist, who will get you the book, because that is how it works. But congratulations, lucky Robin, and the rest of you, you know what to do. Run, click, 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 and get What Have You Done by Shari Lapena. Are you happy with all the buzz for this book, Sherry? Are you just...
Yeah, I find with each book, I seem to get more fans, which is nice. I mean, they seem to get slowly getting more of a following. And the nice thing is a lot of readers like to go back and look at my backlist. So that's kind of nice too. So I'm happy with the response this book has had, especially about the ghost, because I wasn't sure about that. That was a bit of a risk, I thought, for me. It was a bit different. But even for people that don't like ghosts, it's still pretty much a Shari Lapena novel. I think the teenage girl sounds like a teenage girl. So but it was a bit of a departure for me.
I mean, and it's sort of not like, woo, a ghost. It's a,
Yeah.
it's a presence. It's a
Yeah.
presence. It's a manifestation of something.
Yeah.
And we've all had something like that in our own lives. And I think that's what makes it so relatable.
Mhm.
And not as, it's not really paranormal. It's just sort of super normal. And
Yeah.
that's lovely. That's really lovely. Before I let Shari go, let me say to you all that next week I'll be on book tour for my paperback of One Wrong Word, and I hope I will see you. We're doing the magical mystery tour of Cape Cod, so that'll be really, really fun.
Ooh, fun.
It will be. I mean, that was a clever move on my part.
And congratulations on the paperback, because I read that in hardcover and I loved it.
Thank you. Maybe we could just have Shari say that again. All right. So thank you. Thank you for your early support on that book as well. It really means a lot to me. Next, so we're going to skip next Tuesday. We're going to skip the 6th, and then the 13th we are double booked on Crime Time, and that is a good thing. The only time it's good to be double booked is on Crime Time. First, we will have Word Hunter by Stella Sands. Look at this cool cover, and it says, "Sometimes it's not about what they say, it's how they say it." It's about a woman who's a super sentence diagrammer. I mean, only thriller authors could swarm to a sentence diagrammer, which I all loved. And then at 4:00 we will have Emma Bamford's Eye of the Beholder, which is apparently inspired by Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo, one of the scariest, creepiest psychological thrillers of all time. Mighty Blaze says, this is Margaret in the back room says, nerdy book talk assemble. Okay, so we have sentence diagramming and Alfred Hitchcock. Can't go wrong with that, especially when you add a dollop of Shari Lapena's and her wonderful What Have You Done? Shari, thank you. Have fun on book tour.
Thank you. My pleasure to be here. I always love talking to you, Hank.
Oh my goodness.
I still remember our talk last year in Boston. It was the best one of the tour. I just so enjoyed it. So we have to do that again.
I am totally in. Thank you.
Yeah.
I agree. It was wonderful, and I'm a massive fan. And I'm a massive fan of all of yours too. Thank you so much, all of you, for coming today to Crime Time. Remember, next week we're off. The next week we're here with the double booked at 3 and 4. And until then, remember what I always say: it is always safe inside a book. And we will see you next time.